Okay, we finished with the catalyst. We looked at some fault codes with the catalyst. Now we're moving on to the diesel particulate filter. I'm going to start this with the fault codes that you experience that are related to the diesel particulate filter. I know a lot of you owners and operators never see these, and the techs do that work on your engine, but you should be asking for a printout of your fault codes when you go to get work done. And if you know what they mean, it helps you to make a better decision about the choices you have to make. So let's take a quick look at these. Then the next video after this will be showing you the filter itself and some problems with it, talking about that. And then after that, I've got a lunch table discussion about the diesel particulate filter. And that's off the record, my opinion thing about what I would do if I was an owner operator. So here we go. So I grabbed this fault snapshot because it happens to have all 4 faults for the diesel particulate filter in it. And first is 2639. Under the lamp column, you'll notice that 2639 does not turn on a light, so you, the operator, never know that that fault is active. The reason that fault is there is when it goes active on a modern engine, it prompts the ECM to turn on. The driver needs to pull over and do a forced regen light or regen required light. And once you do that, if it's successful, the light will go out and then you're back on your way. It's important to keep in mind that the normal time frame between these different stages of the 4 fault codes, the minimum is 8 hours, and normally it's probably more like 20 to 30 hours between the logging of these faults. So these faults are all triggered by different levels of DPF restrictions sensed. So on a normal running engine, it takes a long time for the level to change enough to drive the fault. So let's look at the next level now, which is going to be 1981. And that's the first level that turns a light on for the operator. And he'll also notice, if he looks down, that the light will be on that's asking him to do a part regeneration. So 1981 will force that part regeneration light to come on as well. So he'll have the check engine light on and he'll have that button lit up. Up to this point, everything's really normal operation and there's no concern or alarm for any thinking that something's going on that shouldn't be. Now, if there is something going on and the DPF is not able to be cleaned or satisfy the call for a decrease in differential pressure across the diesel particulate filter, then we're going to go to the next stage, which is 1921. So when 1921 goes active, the amber light begins to now flash. The check engine light will be flashing, and your illuminated button that's calling for a pull the unit over and do a forced stationary regen will be illuminated. And if you keep driving, the next stage is going to be the red light comes on, and that'll be fault code 1922. And then the engine's going to go into a severe derate, and you're going to be over on the side of the road, or the machinery is going to stop doing what it's meant to do. Now I'm putting up a snapshot of the regen history out of Insight software. See where it says time since previous regen on the top left there? That column is telling you how many hours went by since the engine did a passive regen. And I know these are all passive or driving regens because of this column right here. And you can see in that column all the temperatures are almost 600 degrees. There's one that's 500 just about. And that means he was going down the road when it did the regen. So that's how I can tell. I just learned that from years of looking at these. So over on the time since previous regen, 101 hours, it doesn't get any better than that. This is about a perfect history that if I had a vehicle, I would love to see on mine. And this is something you can see with Insight software or probably other softwares. Now, if you stopped at a shop and the guy at the shop, say he put an EGR valve on your engine and he goes, well, I'm going to do a stationary regen because I just changed the EGR valve, or maybe he'll even do 2 in a row. Sometimes we do that. This chart would say, let's say he did that right in the middle. So you have 102 hours, 102 hours, 102 hours, 102 hours, and then you had 30 minutes, and then you had 2 hours, and then you went back to 101, 105. That's because somebody intervened. How can you tell that? Go to the catalyst intake temperature, and it's going to be way under 500. It's going to be down at 200 or 300 degrees, or even colder if he sat overnight. So that's how you can tell if someone got in there and did some work with software. Now let's look at regen history from another engine, time since previous regeneration. Look at that. 3 hours, 7 hours, 7 hours, 10 hours, 7 hours. It's just horrendous. It's not even making it 8 hours, and it's cleaning, and then it's going to completely plugged up again. And if you go over to the far right and look at diesel particulate outlet temperature, it's at 1120, 1230. It's out the roof. Back the video up and look at the temperatures on the good regen chart and compare it to the bad. You'll see the differences there. So this chart is out from the engine that you saw the fault snapshot for earlier in this video, where all 4 stages were in one fault snapshot, and they weren't that many hours apart. And the ECM didn't even have time to make any kind of decision because it had to have about 8 hours between stages for it to process all of this. The software doesn't think like us. It's slow. It's got to look at tables and timers and everything else. So if you're driving down the road and you stop because your light comes on to do a regen, and you do the regen and you take off, and in 2 hours the light comes on again, something's going on and you need to get somewhere and get checked, because you are probably going to end up with 1922 going active. And then guess what? You got to get the vehicle towed, because to unlock 1922, you have to, per Cummins, replace the diesel particulate filter, or at least clean it. But they replace it these days. And you have to recalibrate the engine ECM. You can do a reset that'll drive 1922 inactive, but 1921 will still be active. And then they have to do a stationary regen, which is about an hour and a half. And then 1921 will go inactive. Now you might say, why is 1921 active when there's a brand new filter in it? It's because that is a software table that is calculated to the maximum allowed, and the only way that that table decreases is by timing through an entire successful stationary regen. You can't recalibrate it out. About the only way you can make that go away if you don't do a regen is to replace the engine's ECM. So you don't want to go there. We talked about a lot today. Hopefully you learned a lot. The big takeaways from this are understanding the amount of time between either your lights coming on for asking for a regen, or passive regens if you can kind of tell that's going on. And then the other thing is the 1921 with the light flashing. I wanted you to make sure that you understood that if you just went home and threw a filter in at your, say your local garage where you do your own work, or at your shop behind the house, that 1921 is still going to be active even with a new filter after you drive it. And it takes that going through that regen process, whether you do it with software or the button on the dash, it has to go through that process. It's kind of like getting an earache and you need some antibiotics. You got to go through the course before the problem's gone. Same kind of thing, except the problem's not there. It's just the timer. You really don't need to get the ECM recalibrated for any of these problems ever. The only reason to recalibrate the ECM is if there's a revision that will help you to solve some problems or make some things a little bit better. And you can go to that revision list in QuickServe. You'll see that in another video where you can look and see what the revisions fix if they tell you. Sometimes it just says no warrantable items in this update. And then most of the time, it's just kind of sharpening the tack on the software that's already in there and making it or helping it to do its job a little bit better. And any questions, please ask them. I'll answer them to the best of my ability. And please subscribe. That helps me. Please click like if you like the video. That helps me. And we'll see you in the next video, which is going to be our kind of a lunch table talk about my opinion on what I would do if I was an owner-operator. And it's in regards to the high temperature light. We'll talk about that. Okay, see you next time on Engine Shop Joe.